The second scene for our Boo Crew projection display is almost completed, but there are still some additional details we can add to this scene to fully flesh out the story, and that's what we will be focusing on in today's video. When we last left off, we had finished animating the movements of a video asset in order to better tell its story within the context of the scene we are building. Let's do a quick scan of the complete scene so far to determine what details or fixes we may need for this. First, disable the map file, and then navigate over to the edit page. While we are here, let's add the audio from the Flying Blind Boo Crew decoration to our scene by double-clicking the video in our media pool and dragging the audio down to the audio tracks. Make sure the audio is pulled all the way over to the left. Let's see how this all comes together. Overall not too bad, but there was a blip that occurred with the coffin video. Let's locate the frame number that the blip occurred on. If you ever need to navigate frame by frame on the edit page, you can simply press the left or right arrow keys on your keyboard depending on which direction you want to go in. Now that we've located the frame, I need to open the layer that contains that coffin video. This is placed on the base layer, so let's open that up in the Fusion page to look into the issue. Because we know we placed that on the garage door tree limb, we can quickly move to that location in the nodes pane. Then find the media node containing the video. Recall that we looped this video to replay when it was over, but the final frame in this particular video is completely black, most likely because I messed it up when I composited it together originally. To fix that, determine how many frames are affected by it. In this case it's just one. Then in the inspector, find the out property located under the trim slider, and change it from 954 to 953. This will remove the bad frame at the end when we loop the video. Now you can see that the blackout frame no longer appears. That front door is a lot darker than the window frames, and it might be better if they more closely matched. Let's head back into Fusion, find the media node for the door, and then add a color corrector node. Don't forget the pre-divide, post-multiply checkbox, and let's tint this a bit more toward the red color. That's a little bit better. Now let's determine if there are any other details we could add to the scene. Not only can a few extras help our scene really shine, but they can also be used to hide mistakes or imperfections that can occur. Looking at this scene, I think a few curtains would help jazz up what's happening here. Let's open the top layer of our scene in Fusion, and once again enable the map file for placement. On the garage side of the house, let's add some big hanging draw curtains, and fit the asset appropriately. A little color correction won't hurt either to darken up the curtain a bit. Now let's add some curtains over the windows. Because I want this behind the Boo Crew ghosts, I'll need to move them closer to the trunk, before adding in the asset. To keep it simple we will be adding just 2 curtains for now, so add 2 merge nodes to the limb. Here I'll be using a curtain animation from the Baird Manor Patreon. This video doesn't have an alpha background, so we will need to do the usual steps of using the Luma keyer to remove the black from it. And we can do some color correction to try and match this up with the scene a bit. This asset has 3 curtains in it, but you can see that no matter how we resize and place it, it's not going to fit the windows perfectly. We will need to mask them off in order to make them individual window curtains. Using a polygon mask, draw around any of the individual curtains. Now we have an option. We can apply the mask directly to the media node itself, which is the best option when you are using media that does not have the same resolution as your project settings. Or we can apply this to the merge node, but if the media resolution doesn't match you will have to make adjustments to the mask. It will work, it just won't look right at first. For this I'm going to apply it directly to the media node, and place the first curtain in the middle of the house. For the second curtain, let's copy all of the nodes we currently have including the polygon mask, and then connect them to the limb. Select the polygon mask, and using the preview window, click and drag to select all the points of the mask. Now, move the mask over by holding down your arrow key to the right. You can make this move over faster if you hold down the Shift key at the same time as you are holding down your arrow key. Connect the mask, and use the transform node for placement. There is a specific reason for doing it this way, and it's so we can introduce randomness. Scanning through, we can see that the curtains are waving together at the exact same time in the exact same motion. This makes it look kind of phony as the video plays. In the real world, curtains wouldn't behave that way. So let's introduce a little randomness to this by selecting one of the media nodes for the curtains. Then, using the inspector, move the trim slider over for a decent number of frames. This makes the starting point of the curtain video later than the other curtain, which will cause it to wave differently than the first curtain. This is an example of how small details can make your scene better. Even though most people won't catch on with a detail like this, the ones that do will appreciate the effort that has been put in when creating this scene. There's no need to loop this particular video, since it runs for a longer number of frames than this scene actually has. With the final details of this scene added, let's end this tutorial by smoothing out the movement of our Boo Crew ghosts to make it a little less choppy. This section is probably the best example of where it gets disjointed, but we can fix this using the spline pane. With the transform node selected that contains our keyframes, open the spline pane by selecting this icon. Enable the keyframe points in the spline pane by clicking on the checkbox. In the spline pane, each of the points on the graph represents one of the keyframes. The lines represent the movement from one keyframe to the other, and you'll notice they are sharp straight lines between all the keyframes. We can smooth those lines out by selecting the points and hitting S on our keyboard. This will start with a slower movement, ramp up the speed in the middle, and slow it down again at the end. If you ever need to see all of your keyframes graphed out in the spline pane, you can click on this icon, which will zoom out enough to include them all. Sometimes you will need to smooth out all of your points, and sometimes you will just want to smooth out the motion of a few of them like we did here. This will be situation dependent. With that completed, our scene is done. Let's turn off the map file and see how everything came together. Overall, I'm okay with this look. Although, I have a section up here that did not line up quite right. Most likely I adjusted the whole house mask on the top layer inadvertently at some point. If I was going to actually use this display on my home, I'd take the time to fix it and even check if it was something I did in my template. Let's see a clip of this all put together. All that's left is to render our scene, but because of how much detail we added in, it may take a while. So in the next video, we will be taking a look at how we can give the Resolve renderer a helping hand by pre-composing some assets, now that our scene has been built. I will see you next time.